We've still got a few people coming through, but we'll kick off the webinar. I just wanted to say my name is Amelia Chalker, and on behalf of the WIMARC committee, I'd like to thank our sponsors, MEC Mining, for hosting this webinar. We have an astounding 300 attendees registered for the session, so it should be a really good one. I'd also like to thank the other women in mining and resources bodies across Victoria, New South Wales and Western Australia for supporting this event. With that being said, I'll pass you over to Erin Sweeney, who is the moderator for this webinar and is the Technical Services Manager for the MEC Mining WA branch. Over to you, Erin.
Thank you, Amelia. So once again, thank you so much to our women in mining communities who have really gotten behind this very meaty topic today. So we'll just do a bit of admin up first. So today we're running a panel session, and I expect that there's going to be a lot of discussion that's going to be generated today. So please feel free to type all your questions. There should be a Q&A box just on the screen below you. So please feel free to type your questions into there. We'll collate all those, and we've saved a little 15-minute portion at the end of the discussion panel to address those and hand those over to the panel. So just to set the scene a little bit, one thing is really certain about today's leaders, it's that technical competence alone is not enough to make a leader successful. For many people, the opportunity to manage a team comes from demonstrating high quality technical expertise, and yet often as a manager, you must leave behind being a subject matter expert and become a people leader. This transition requires developing a whole new set of skills that probably didn't come with your undergrad degree. So today we're going to delve into the experience of our esteemed panel of guests so you can become a little bit more effective in these new responsibilities even faster. Here to help us break down the transition is our panel of experts. So first up, we have John Banning. If you give us a wave, John. John is a co-founder of Business Agility Consultancy and a resource executive focused on outcomes and excellence through the development of high-performance teams with a culture of resilience and integrity. He has a strong corporate mining background with experience that ranges from designing and implementing business strategy and securing investment funding through to project valuation, feasibility studies, and performance improvement. John has held executive roles, including Managing Director and Executive Director of ASX-listed mining companies, and has over 20 years' experience in the mining and construction industries. He's worked with Newcrest, Rio Tinto, Consolidated Tin Mines, Kagara Limited, Xstrata Copper, Metals X, BHP Billiton, Goldfields, Stillwater Mining Company, and others, covering off gold, silver, platinum group metals, copper, zinc, lead, uranium, tin, and iron ore commodities. So welcome, John.
Thank you, Erin.
Next up, we have Gabby Love. So Gabby is a top 100 global inspirational woman in mining and an executive mining professional experienced across gold, copper, uranium, and coal mining. She's the processing plant and infrastructure manager at Mount Arthur Coal for BHP. She is a leader of operational teams with multi-million-dollar management responsibilities. Gabby thrives in challenging roles where she can utilise her strategic thinking, her experience and stakeholder engagement to deliver business outcomes. She has successfully led organisational change through cultural change programs coupled with values-based leadership. She has experience in project management, mergers and acquisitions. She has led concept and pre-feasibility studies, leveraging technology and innovation to add value to the bottom line. And last, we have Tonya Pervez. So Tonya has 22 years experience in human resource management across mining resources and marine. For the past 12 years, Tonya has held senior business leadership positions as the head of HR for several companies and has been a valued member of the executive committees within these appointments. She possesses substantial and expert industrial and employee relations experience and has successes in many complex negotiations and restructures. Tonya has both national and international experience within operational and corporate environments, including substantial experience working across Australia, PNG, Indonesia, and Africa. Tonya has held positions with Global Resources, Newcrest Mining, Kagara Mining, Leighton's Contractors, Engage Marine or Westug, and Tonya is now the Managing Director and Chief People Officer of the HR consulting company Magnetic People. So thank you, panel, for joining me today. I'm really looking forward to the discussion that we're going to have here. And without further ado, let's jump in for our first topic. Just one second while I set us up. Okay. So As I've gone through your introductions, the one thing that really stands out for me is that you all have an extensive amount of experience under your belt and from a really diverse range of experiences. So we might throw to you, Tonya, first. How would you say this has benefited you in your career progression?
Look, I think, Erin, being a technical expert in HR, I've had the opportunity to work at all areas of the people life cycle, if you like, you know, right from recruitment right through to termination and everything in between, whether it be discipline, promotions, you know, people development, and the likes. You know, I think it's really shaped me as a leader because, you know, having to do, you know, some really, really positive things, but also some really difficult things such as, you know, life-changing things, you know, making people redundant or terminating people. And I think it shaped me as a leader to, you know, always put yourself in the person's situation and how you'd like to be treated. I think the biggest learnings I've had have been from probably the worst times in my career, going through mine closures and that sort of thing. But I think that's really been the biggest learnings for me, and it's helped me with the career progression, throwing myself in the deep end, and you know, I think doing it with heart and empathy is really important.
Fantastic. That's really great insight. Thank you for that, Tonya. Gabby, have you got some experience to share with us on how your career has benefited from this very diverse range of experiences you have?
Thanks, Erin. I think you know, having a diverse number of roles demonstrates that you're willing to learn and tackle new horizons and challenges. I think it makes you more able to deal with and cope with ambiguity and uncertainty, because you yourself are putting yourself in this situation of not being necessarily fully across and technically across all of the elements of your new role. So each time you change a role, I think I have learnt something new, and at the same time I think developed a suite of, you know, a bag of tricks that help me come up to speed fairly quickly. So, you know, you get to quickly be capable of identifying, you know, the key themes and issues, and when I get into a new role, I like to sort of ask those that have been around for a while, you know, what their view is on what needs to be changed or improved, or what recommendations they would give for me to address first. And by asking those sorts of questions, I think, you know, you can use that sort of questioning technique to really come up to speed very quickly. So I think generally the benefits of a diverse role really builds a fairly strong toolkit, as well as an ability to, you know, address ambiguity and cope with complex and uncertain situations.
Absolutely, I love that. You're sort of digging into that tool belt to develop some skills to learn how to ask the right questions, rather than always having the answers. John, can you share with us your insights?
Yeah, really just echo Gabby and Tanya's comments. The more experiences that you can put yourself into, the more that you're going to learn, right? So, and career progression is built on that. So that's just going to enhance your toolkit. Again, back to what Gabby and Tanya said, this is going to improve your ability to deal with and manage ambiguity and complexity. So it's a repeating pattern, and that's just going to support career progression if that's your aim.
Absolutely. So throwing ourselves into to the deep end occasionally, just to really motivate us to develop some new skill sets around that, sort of creating clarity from ambiguity. Fantastic. So probably moving on to what's really the crux of this whole conversation sits in sort of the challenges that you've all encountered as you've transitioned from technical expert into a leader. particularly as you're moving into that managerial setting. John, can you share with us what your major learnings were, or some new realizations that you had when you first made that transition?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess we spend a good chunk of our early years at uni or some sort of program or training, learning about the underlying drivers for some technical aspect. Mining engineer for myself, and we deep dive into the sciences that drive the good results we want to be as an SME or a technical expert. And Tanya mentioned before, so now you're a leader. Where's all the training to understand the drivers of the resources you have now, which are people? You know, it's not software, it's not equipment or capital equipment, so to speak. It's people. So we don't get that exposure as such. So you have to seek that out. That was the challenge. It's a complete paradigm shift and mindset change. And oftentimes we don't get the opportunity to go down into that training. Companies spend enormous amounts on systems and process improvement and that they need to do. Yet we don't spend as much probably as we could on developing understanding of people and people drivers and how to build high performance teams.
Absolutely. Gabby, have you got some insights for us? What was that first realization that you had when you moved into that technical, from that technical role into management, and you suddenly realized it was going to be a very different world?
I think, Erin, I wanted to really touch on it before I got to that, because I found that the challenges for me were really around the perception in my ability to diversify. I think I was pigeonholed into a stream, as John's just said, in that technical stream as mining engineer background, and I really wanted to expand, and I was keen to do more, but you know, I was getting held back. And interestingly, on one occasion, I was told that, you know, I was too good at my role to actually be let go and be released to do other things. So I think, you know, that was one challenge that existed for me, and really being able to send a strong message that I was able and capable and willing, and had desires and real passion for wanting to do have a broader impact on the business. So you know, addressing that was a big challenge for me, and in a similar vein to another challenge was the age bias, I think, that existed for me, in that you know, I was in my mid-40s, and I was you know, with 3 children. And I think I was, again, getting, you know, my career had plateaued, if you like, and I was being looked at as somebody who was, you know, never going to kind of make it in anything else other than your standard stock kind of, you know, engineer, you know, a workhorse, as it were. And I think that age bias also played out where I had to really demonstrate that I wasn't done yet, and there was plenty more that I could give, and so tackling that challenge were the things that, you know, I wanted to kind of share with the audience today.
Absolutely. Can you share with us one of the tools that you use to change that perception?
In terms of I think being pigeonholed, one of the things I did was do my MBA, and I think when I was able to demonstrate that, you know, I was willing to learn, that I was willing to invest in myself and demonstrate that capability to really want to learn about the business as a whole, I think that really opened up some doors for me.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks, Gabby. Tanya, what insights can you give us from when you've made that transition from that technical expert into being a people leader?
Yeah, look, It was a challenge because you know, I'm a bit of a people pleaser, and you know, I was you know, the technical expert in the business, and then got given this leadership role. And I remember my GM saying to me all the time, he used to draw on a piece of paper, and he used to write the word no, and he said, Tonya, you need to learn this word no. And so, you know, I took the feedback on board and realised very quickly that, you know, for me to become a leader and a good leader of my team and contribute to my people and the business was to, you know, to trust my team. And, you know, I very quickly identified, you know, who was my 2IC, and then started to hand over work to him. And that way that allowed me to move into and take accountability more of a leadership role. Because I do think it was becoming a bit of a hurdle for me, because everybody only wanted to deal with me. So yeah, that was a bit of a learning. And I think the other thing for me, probably a little bit like Gabby with perception, I was pretty young when I became a leader. And at the time I was a single mum as well. And so, you know, I always felt that I had to work harder than everybody else. And, you know, I'd work to 1, 2 o'clock in the morning and did that for years because of this perception of, you know, I was a young female single mum, and I had this thing in my head that, or maybe people will not think I'm working as hard because I've got kids at home and that sort of thing. And that's a bit of a danger, because you can burn yourself out by doing that. And then you're not of value to anybody. So that was another challenge I had to get over.
Fantastic.
I think, Aaron, just one thing, I want to jump on someone's coattails here. I think a key point, and this is very personal experience, is that technical expert, you're really me focused and what I call stuck in I. So it's all about you being the master of that subject matter or that particular technical thing. And in my personal transition, one of the hardest things to do was to realize that it's just not about you anymore. It's about your team and them as people. And that's a hard habit to break after years of improving oneself technical ability. To make that, have that epiphany moment, I suppose, that it doesn't matter about you anymore. That it's the team and the individuals that make up that team that is now your focus.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So it's you know, how your team performs is now what you need to be focusing on as your most important task. So we've talked a little bit about some of the difficulties coming into that new technical role, but what was actually something you could bring from that technical role with you into the managerial role that helped you as a key strength, and maybe we'll explore some of the weaknesses on that side as well. We'll start with you, John.
Sure. I'll just follow on really with a bit more detail then on that last comment. The challenge or the skill for me personally in technical was the systematic approach to I guess getting better in that technical field, and looking for knowledge and research around those things. So that kind of discipline then transitioned into my thinking around, well, all right, how do I approach people and their drivers and developing teams in the same systematic way? I need to go find knowledge and experience and learn and practice those things, just like I did my technical role. So that was my way of using my strengths, which are, in case different people have different, the 360, Myers-Briggs, et cetera, highly analytical or blue on the insights profile. And so I leveraged that strength to analyze the heck out of it and give myself a path forward. in a leadership role, a weakness that often comes along, and you see it throughout all levels of particularly mining, because technical people a lot of times move up the ladder. Analysis paralysis and failure to make decisions. So needing 99.9% confidence or accuracy before moving forward. So I had to quickly learn the 80-20 rule, and that's 80% confidence is good enough in most cases, and we'll fix the rest up along the way.
Absolutely, fantastic rule. Gabby, what did you bring with you into your management role from your technical background?
Yeah, I think as John was saying, you know, having the analytical background in terms of seeking out knowledge and wanting to always ask questions, I tried to apply that same skill, but in a way that helps guide and develop my team to, you know, help them answer the questions and hold them to account. So being more self-directed in wanting to arrive at decisions. So really asking questions, you know, around what they can identify as the parts of, you know, the different parts of the problem, or what are the arguments for and against, what they've learned from a specific situation, and really drawing on two aspects that I think that are strengths of mine. And one is obviously that analytical, the engineer in me, but second one is an ability to communicate and discuss, you know, to want to talk the issue through, so that there's clarity around understanding of before, you know, before a decision's made, or when both parties come to an agreed conclusion, that there's clarity around why that's occurred. So yeah, leaning on those strengths has helped me apply myself to different environments in managerial role. And in terms of areas for improvement, I think I'm probably a little bit, rather than the analysis paralysis that John spoke of, I think I have a tendency to look for a solution too early in the piece, and I think I'm working on, you know, sometimes letting the solution evolve on its own, rather than sort of jumping to a conclusion too early, allowing it to kind of just happen, or indeed, you know, let others make that decision.
Absolutely, that sounds fantastic. Tanya, can we get some of your insights?
Yeah, I think for me it's a little bit different. Being technical in HR, it's our bread and butter to, you know, to work with leaders day in, day out, and, you know, obviously how to deal with people. So it's sort of I suppose a little bit of a benefit in that regard, going from a technical role and then leading, because I think one of the things for me is I've always observed leaders and analyse them and think, oh gee, you know, that person's, you know, really, really great in this situation and has got these behaviours and values, and then you've experienced some unbecoming leaders, if you like, and learning about, you know, what they do and how it made you feel or made that person feel, and you don't want to take those traits moving forward. So I think it's that poor leadership sticks with you kind of scenario for me. And, you know, we're not always perfect, but, you know, I think getting feedback from people has also been a really good thing as well. Yeah, and in terms of weaknesses, I think going from a technical leader role, a technical expert, then to it, you know, to having a team and a leader, I think you've really got to make sure that you prioritise your work. You know, if there's too much, if you've got too much on your plate, you know, it's going to fall off and you're not going to achieve. So So again, I think trusting your team and making sure that you delegate as well is really important.
Absolutely. I love that. Trust the team and delegate, making sure that it keeps the team ticking over, plus it also provides them with an opportunity for development as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't be scared of your team. You know, I have a thing about my team chasing me. I think that's a big motivator.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Tonya. So we might stay with you for this next one as well. So one of the things I think that will resonate really well with our Women in Mining audience is this idea of confidence trumping competence, as the saying goes in the boardroom. Can you shed some insight for us on whether you think this is true or false, and what have you done to build up your confidence and competence over the years?
Yeah, look, I actually think you need to be confident and competent. I think in my experience, if you're confident but not competent, you'll last a little while, and then you won't have the respect of people. And then I think if you're competent but not confident, in my experience, I think people tend to get overlooked, and you know, you miss out on promotions and opportunities and that sort of thing. So I think it's a balance. I think you need both. That's my thoughts.
Absolutely, thank you.
Don't know what that was, sorry.
A little bit of working from home interruption. It's bad. So Gabby, can you give us your insights? What do you think about confidence versus competence?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and as you say, it's a bit of a hot topic in the women in mining space. For me, I think confidence does mean different things to different people, but confidence to me is about having self-belief, trusting that in yourself that you can deliver what's required, and that you'll find, you know, the resources, the information, the knowledge that you need to get the job done. It's not necessarily the loudest person in the room. You know, it's not, confidence is not arrogance. And I think there is a bit of a stigma in women around what it looks like to be confident, and it doesn't look like, in my opinion, being the loudest, most arrogant person in the room. There's a very big difference, and knowing that difference is you know, it's important, and that you develop a sense of self-belief and self-worth that allows you to project that confidence when you're with others. For me, speaking in a meeting or in a group, large group, was always an issue, and I used to go home and chew my husband's ear off because I didn't ask that question in a meeting, a group meeting, and he just got sick of it, and he said to me, "What, you should go and join Toastmasters if you're not willing to speak up." And I did, and it really helped me with being confident to speak up, to know what I wanted to say, you know, not to be afraid, if you like, of that fear of speaking up in a crowd or in a group. And you know, that sort of led me to push myself to be even more visible internally and externally within the business, and you know, becoming part of the AusIMM WIMNet and nominating for things like WIM 100, you know, which by the way is currently taking nominations. So I really encourage everyone to sort of put themselves out there in that way to become more confident. But in terms of competence as well, I just think that it's a bit of a relative term, isn't it? Because we can only measure competence relative to what we know is the best or the benchmark. We don't know everything, and we certainly don't know what best is, or best ever, or best imaginable. So I think it's just lifelong learning, and I'm always working on it. And I just feel that, again, in this women in mining space, there's a lot of examples that I've seen personally of women in interviews, you know, really calling out their own deficiencies in during the interview, in fact, calling out what the gaps are between where they're at and what the role's calling for. And I think, you know, really, they almost sort of sabotage, their humility sort of sabotages them in a way. So I think we just need to be mindful that competence is an aspirational goal, but you're never quite there. Even, you know, the most technically proficient or experienced individuals, I think, would say they're probably still working on it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not an easy one to tackle at all, but I really like your approach of being really purposeful about addressing the gap that you see and being mindful that it needs to be addressed, so that, and taking action on that in you know, fruitful ways. Thanks, Gabby. John, what perspective have you got on this question?
Sure. Excuse me. I guess to be clear, I always like to go back to definitions of things. So when I look at competence, competence is being effective and efficient at something, and confidence is really the conveyance of that effectiveness and efficiency. So the external manifestation of competence. So looping that back to Gabby's comments, if you're competent, that's great, but if you can speak from that competence backing and self-assurance and communicate that effectively, so this boils down to language and communication, right? Then confidence is kind of both, and I think that's what Tanya said as well. So I look at one's internal, and confidence is about that internal part, about being, yeah, I'm effective and efficient at that. But then the confidence is something you share to garner firm trust from others. And so look at what Gabby said, you know, well, I want to be better at that, so I'm going to go do something about it. So that's what good looks like, to where you go gain confidence and then be able to do those things. And that's a great example of the things you go do to get great at getting better.
Absolutely. And I found, you know, as I was transitioning from that technical expert into sort of that managerial type role, you know, particularly coming off from a niche expert into something to managing an area that I wasn't necessarily an expert over. I found the use of a mentor, and in fact, John was actually one of my mentors as I transitioned through that phase. John, can you give us a bit of insight as to the benefit that you think mentoring has to help fill some of these sort of gaps as you're transitioning?
Absolutely. Mentoring is, or a mentor is just a great place to, an environment to soundboard, whereby you may not be able to have that environment with a work colleague or a boss. So it's a safe place and a trusted place that those things can be explored, and the mentor can then challenge the heck out of you to go along a path of self-discovery and sort of thinking your way to conclusions, which thereby you own them. So that's kind of the path that you follow on that.
Absolutely. Gabby, I know you've had quite a few along the way, and you've been one of my confidants as well throughout our career. We've been working together for a number of years. What benefit do you think mentoring has to help transition?
Oh, absolutely. I agree totally with what John said around, you know, a mentor is someone that you can bounce in a safe way, bounce around where you're at, challenge you, stretch you, and help you know yourself a little bit better as well. So I've found it quite very beneficial. I think, one of the, back in the day, I really didn't have mentors, but finally did ask, someone to be my mentor, and that was what I got out of it, was the ability to really just dream bigger and stretch myself, know who I am, what is my unique offering, what are the things that have made me who I am, and how do I project them out in terms of how I behave and how I lead and what I stand for, basically. And so I think once you learn what that unique offering is, you don't have to really worry about comparing yourself to others, because who you are and what you bring to the table. And also, I think she helped me accept that, my career journey wasn't necessarily a straight line, that it, raising my children and doing a variety of different things was a squiggly line, and it was mine, and I had to own it and get the value out of all those experiences.
And what's some of the best advice that you got during those mentoring programs that really resonated with you?
I think the best advice really was, one specific example I could share is that, as I said earlier, my career had stalled, if you like, from having raised children and making decisions around the family. And, putting that into a frame of reference that allowed me to talk to it and tell people that, I had raised a family, and I'd done so quite deliberately, but also, that choice was made in a way that had allowed me to be the best person I could be, both at work and at home. And at a time when it was almost taboo to talk about having a family, it was taboo to even contemplate, going home at 4 o'clock because you had hungry mouths to feed. So that really helped me own my history and my experience, my decisions.
Thanks, Gabby. Tonya, so you've probably seen this from a professional mentoring perspective, but you would have had mentors of your own along the way. What's been your experience? What's really resonated with you on the mentor topic?
I think for me, I've absolutely had a number of mentors, and most of them haven't been in HR, which I think has been a really good thing, because it's allowed me to think a bit differently. One of my greatest mentors had this really entrepreneurial spirit about him, and the benefit for me was to, see grey as opposed to very much black and white. I think there's a lot of benefit there, and absolutely agree with Gabby and John around, a mentor is somebody that you can confide in, and they can challenge you and get you to think differently. And, I think that's really important.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tonya. So as we sort of think about mentors, when you're transitioning from that technical expert into a leader, one of the challenges that you're going to have to face along the way, a mentor may be able to help you come to terms with this, but is having people who are your former peers or friends now report into you. So how do you deal with that transition?
Me? Sorry?
Yes, sorry, Tonya, yes.
I'm sorry, okay. Yeah, no, it's an interesting one. You see it quite a lot. I think people sort of have to sit back and adjust how they interact. If you're going from a colleague situation to, you're now the leader, there's different expectations, there's different levels of confidentiality, there's different discussions, all of that sort of stuff. You might need to adjust socially how you interact. So I think it is an adjustment. Biggest struggle I see from a HR point of view when technical experts go into a leader role is when discipline comes up. There's a lot of coaching that needs to happen because, you've come from a technical role and then you might need to discipline an ex-colleague who you're now the leader. And we see a lot of avoidance. So I think getting that courage, if you like, to move forward with that. But that's the struggle I see.
Excellent. Gabby, what strategies have you used to manage people who are former peers?
I actually haven't had too many, to be perfectly honest with you. Most cases that my peers were getting promoted ahead of me, but there was one occasion many years ago where a guy that I went to uni with was reporting directly to me, and I think the way that I dealt with it at the time was like everything, respectful behaviour. We both have different roles, playing to the role and not personal, and so really just he had different skills to me. He was the work he was doing was very different to mine, and he had a part to play in the team, and you need that for the overall success of the business. So I think it was just the fundamentals of treating everyone. We're all part of a team and we all have different roles to play, and that's why we're there and in those positions.
Yeah, thanks, Gabby. John, can we grab your insights on this one too?
Yeah, sure. This is an interesting one. I've had both sides, been on both sides of this one quite a few times. And really, in my view, of course, this is around conflict management and conflict avoidance, and this is an area that seems to plague all of us, really, to a degree, more or less. So from that perspective, this is about embracing conflict, knowing that conflict is natural and absolutely necessary for improvement in all areas. So learning about embracing conflict, right? So if there is this situation that arises, you be proactive, you grab the potential conflict head on, and you have the chat, and you talk about the risks, and you talk about how you're going to manage it in the context of what Tonya and Gabby said. There's changing expectations, there's changing accountabilities. So, hey, I value our friendship enough to have this conversation to make sure that we can move forward in a positive way. So, right. So now you've just, and that conversation's live, it's ongoing. If there's a friend, there's probably already trust and respect. So you're already ahead of the game as far as one of your team members is concerned. And now you're in a place where the conflict has been managed in a positive way. So there's clarity of accountability, responsibility, and a protection mechanism in place to manage that. And over time, these things result in enhanced trust and friendship and even work colleagues. So down the track, these trusted colleagues and friends become go-to people for you in your network where you need to soundboard or there's a role to be filled or over the years. So it's important to nurture and protect those things.
Absolutely. Thanks, John. That's really insightful. I'm going to switch over now to answer some of the questions from the audience. So we actually have quite a number, so I'll do my best to address them all in the time that we have. I guess the first one is, we've got one here that's directly for Gabby that's coming internally from BHP. So we've got an engineer who's currently studying an MBA. She doesn't really know how to move from engineering role to a leadership role. So how did you actually make that transition with, and what would you recommend from the inside the business?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. I think it was definitely a singular objective of mine to try and diversify as a result of doing the MBA. So having the conversation with as many executives or other, leaders in the business as would listen. So I really put myself to task in terms of reaching out to senior leaders and having that coffee or asking to meet with them to talk about what opportunities there might be, having a clear plan in terms of talking what I would talk to them about. So what it was in their area that I was interested in, and making sure that I had that clear in my mind and a pitch, as it were, so that if they could see that I'd done my homework, I knew what it was I wanted to get out of and where I wanted to work and what I think I could offer them in that area, that department. They were the things that I did fairly actively. And then just Mother Nature or, fate took over where I was in the right place at the right time that gave me that first opportunity to really branch out of my technical stream. Just tell people they're not mind readers and they need to hear it from you, and the passion, the interest, the research, the homework needs to come through when you have that conversation.
Absolutely, that manager removed is so important to making sure that you're getting on the right path and you're getting that seen at higher levels as well. John, have you got some insights on this one as well?
Sorry, what was the? I was listening to Gabby intently and I lost the query on that one.
It's just about how do you make sure that you can transition or get nominated for these roles to move up from a technical to a leadership role in an organisation if you're not currently getting that kind of attention? How important is that sponsorship as well, I guess, is that just following on from another question?
Sure. My view is, and having been in the situation too, many times, is if I have the question right, get the opportunity to move up the chain, so to speak. Is that the question, Erin?
Yeah. So what does it actually take internally within an organisation to make that to be seen as a leader, so you can get selected for those roles or present yourself for those roles, and what sponsorship is necessary?
Yeah. Look, my experience is that consistently demonstrate back to competence and confidence, to be able to do that level of role and do it with confidence and self-assurance. So that means that every opportunity you have to demonstrate that, right, without sacrificing your self-orientation and destroying trust, you need to demonstrate that thing or that behavior or that competence in front of the right people. So then they can have the confidence to see your capability to go do that thing.
Visibility, highly important, absolutely. Tonya, have you got some insights for this one as well?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Gabby in regards to building relationships with leaders and executives in the business. I think that's really important, and also speaking up and stepping forward, because not everybody wants to be a leader. Some people are really, really comfortable in staying in their technical role, whether it be a trade, whether it be engineer, metallurgist, whatever it might be. Some people just want to do that and they don't want to be a leader. So I think it's important that you do have your voice be heard and say, yep, this is what I want to do. The other thing I think is really important is I think you need to take ownership of your own personal and professional development. Seek feedback, take on board feedback, understand where you're at, what you need to develop in, how you're going to go and get that development. Is it going to be through a mentor? Are you going to go and seek out, a development course in leadership or, adapting styles or whatever it might be? But I think it's really important to understand yourself and how you're going to grow and develop and what you need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that.
Look,
So we've got a question.
I volunteered for everything. Sorry, Erin. I think I missed the mark there a bit. So I'll jump back onto what Gabby and Tanya said, and this is about sharing personal experience. So for a very long time, I just simply put my hand up for everything, no matter how, whatever opportunity, project, training course, anything, even if it didn't really matter, right? Or I wasn't really that interested in it personally. And that was one of the ways that I showed that I wanted more and that I was capable of more, and so that I could demonstrate that drive and desire and ability. So eventually that bit me, but for a long time it worked well.
It's that old adage of jumping off the cliff and building the parachute on the way down. Sometimes you just have to take a leap of faith and put your hand up and get yourself in the arena. Thanks for that, John. So we've got a question here about MBAs and how important is an MBA in a leadership role? What's the argument for and against? Gabby, I know you've got a perspective on this, so I'll start with you.
Okay, so obviously for me, it was an enabler. It was definitely an enabler. It got me noticed, and it achieved what I wanted to get out of it. But I think also it's quite useful if you've been a technical expert and you've because of wanting to be competent in that stream, you've neglected the broader business, and you've not been able to rise above the trenches and look at the business from a 30,000 feet and really understand what the value drivers for the business are, how important organisational management is, how important all of the value, all of the value chain is. You need to, I think the MBA gives you that, so it's a very complete, rounded sort of program that gives you, that injection of what you may have missed along the way. So, I think it's fairly important to if you want to get that sort of career progression, you would do that. Having said that, there's everything that you learn in an MBA, you could probably learn through the School of Hard Knocks in an organisation if you do what John was suggesting, where you volunteer for everything. So if there's an opportunity to be in a project where there's continuous improvement, or there's some cost cutting, or there's some they're needing some extra hand, you just learn by doing. You can get yourself that experience, and I think certainly self-taught MBA is another way you could do it. But I'm a supporter of MBAs. Yeah.
Tanya, what are your thoughts?
Look, I don't have an MBA. I've probably been the latter part of Gabby's little talk there around, learning on the job, basically, and throwing myself into, major restructures, divestment, whatever it is, and understanding that my financial side was not my strong suit. I've sort out projects and works that would challenge me to learn. So, but equally, I think an MBA is a very structured program as well, and I think it is a positive that people go and do it. And will I go and do it? Possibly. At the moment, running a business is not really able to, but yeah, look, I think there's pros for either, having an MBA and not, if you can seek out and you've got the opportunities to learn on the job, if you like.
Yep. John, what do you think?
This is a great question. My personal experience is Gabby's comment, the School of Hard Knocks. So picking it up as I went along my career progression. We've all had some mentors, and one of them I said, well, I don't understand the financial side of things, and what do I, so that person's response was, so what are you doing about it, right? What are you doing about it? Quit whinging and get on with it. So I had to self-educate. It was a choice because we all have choices with our time, and we all have accountabilities. So I learned as I went. The opportunity to go through it in a structured manner would have been fantastic because I really enjoy that side of things. But I'm comfy now. So, but from a different view, if I'm hiring someone or looking to hire someone in that space with that background, it's much easier to feel, I guess, tucked in, that they have that knowledge, as opposed to ferreting that out from a conversation in CV that they have that competence. And that doesn't mean everyone who has an MBA is competent. Okay, we all know that. But it's certainly a hell of a good foot to put forward.
Yeah, that really resonates with me. I picked up doing an MBA to develop some competence, but also the key benefit of that was actually it significantly increased my confidence, so that I was actually able to sit in a management meeting and have a really strong and educated viewpoint. That was an education that was accelerated quite quickly through doing an MBA. So I see a lot of value in that. Sorry.
It shows me, while you're having a drink, that if someone's had the will and tenacity to, because this is postgraduate, so you're probably working, to go and do that and make that kind of commitment to enhance your capability, that says a lot in and of itself, because those are hard yards. So there's lots to be said for that, right? In not just having that competence.
Absolutely. Well, we are pretty much nearing the end of the hour now. So what I might do, you've got some really interesting questions here. So we might try and wrap them up and answer them in another format outside this webinar. But if we can just get your key takeaways from each of our panelists on what you would like the audience to leave knowing as they're making this transition, or if they're already in that management role, what's the key takeaway for you that's really important right now? So maybe Tonya will kick off with you.
Yeah, for me, it's around building and maintaining and developing trust with your team, being empathetic, but you've got to be resolute. Having good communication, being really visible with your team, leading with values, I think is important. But I think the most important thing is you need to have a heart. I think that's really, really important. And look, if you can do that, and you can build a culture in your team where everyone in your team is doing the right thing when nobody's watching, then you're a success. But yeah, I think I think that's some of those attributes that that makes a good leader.
Oh, thanks, Tonya. I love that. Have heart. I think that sort of expresses that sense of genuineness that people really want to latch onto in a leader as well, that things are really coming from the heart for you. So
yeah, and you'll find that you'll get a loyal and motivated and dedicated team because you've got that genuineness, like you say. So yeah.
Gabby, what about you? What's your insights on your final key takeaways for the audience?
So I would encourage everyone to really work on understanding their own self-worth and their unique value proposition. So the more you understand yourself, the more that you'll be able to lead others and really work with others in a way that you have that what we're talking about there in terms of the genuine spirit of intent around wanting to make them the best person they can be. And I think also use your strengths. So lean on your strengths. They're going to be the things that are going to help you deliver on what you need to get done. So understand what your strengths are and really lean on those. And become a lifelong learner. I really think that, you know, you need to take the approach that no one person knows it all, and that, you know, you can continue to learn as you go through life, but certainly learn from others, learn from those around you as well.
Thanks, Gabby. That's fantastic. John, what are your key takeaways for the audience?
Sure. Yeah, love Tanya's and Gabby's, of course, and absolutely reinforce those. Probably the couple most important ones for me, and I'll share a quick story. I was in a meeting with a weekly meeting with the GM once, and one of my colleagues, a manager, complained about not having enough time when queried by the GM, and the GM, this is a fair while ago, stood up and said, I am in control of my own time, and walked out of the room and left us all just kind of sitting there. And it hit me like a freight train that it was a huge epiphany that I was in complete control of my own time and my effective use of it. And it was one of the most empowering moments that I've had, and not being a victim of time. That was incredibly powerful for me, and maybe it will be for some of the people on right now. Another one was, as you progress through your career, be mindful to, as Gabby said, leverage your strengths, but you naturally will anyway, because we all like to go do what we're good at or what we're strong at. Okay, so let that happen naturally. That'll be your natural drive, but don't let it run away from you. Focus on your weaknesses, improve the weaknesses, be objective, and shore those things up along the way.
Thanks, John. So just to share with the panel some of the key takeaways that I've really sort of resonated with me from you guys today. So Tanya, I really liked, you know, in your first answer, this biggest learning comes from the worst times. So really sort of digging deep in those times and embracing that's a steep learning curve. Hang on, don't try to be perfect through that time, but you know, value it, because the lessons are going to come hard and fast, and you're really going to get ahead. For Gabby, I think, you know, what really resonated was this, you know, purposeful investment in yourself. So taking the time to understand what the gaps are, and then setting up a plan, an action plan to actually go in and address those gaps. That's really, I think that's going to really resonate with the audience. And John, taking away this, you know, the analysis paralysis to the 80-20 rule. So just letting go of the need to be constantly the person who has all the answers all the time, and sort of getting stuck on finding those solutions, and embracing this 80-20 rule. So having, you know, 80% of the information is probably going to be good enough, and a lot of the time maybe that's 70. So yes, thank you very much to all our panels today, and I really hope that we've provided some fantastic insights, judging from the number of questions that I can still continue to see rolling in. I feel so bad that we can't answer them right now, but what we might do is set up another panel discussion another time, and we'll take some of those questions and put them into that panel. So thank you, everybody, and have a great afternoon.